Welcome to another podcast episode of Don't Worry About the Government. I'm Ronnie Weiss. Today with me we have a special guest, Alex Howard. Hello, sir. How are you?
Great. Nice to be with you.
Thanks for being here. So if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Sure. I write for O'Reilly Media. I also do interviews, and I'm doing some podcasts like this. I live and work in Washington, D.C., in the capital, and try to write about the intersection of technology, politics, and government, and occasionally have some success.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, from everything I've seen, you are somebody who's very much respected in this, and I assume at least some of the people watching this have already heard of you. So one of the things I always see in your bios is the term Government 2.0. What does that mean?
Well, it's a somewhat nebulous term because a lot of people use it in different senses. There's been a feeling for years that it's simply social media used in and by government, right? But that's in the same sense that Web 2.0 is just social media companies. The larger sense of the term, which I should say was actually coined by two people in my company, in O'Reilly Media, years ago, is that it's thinking about the web in a different way. So thinking about collective intelligence, about the use of data in different ways, about creating platforms for people to build on top of. That's a lot of what people think about in terms of Web 2.0 as an idea. So it's not just about social media per se, but about the principles that you can build companies like that upon. And so when I think about Government 2.0, it's actually about applying the same principles that help build the web and help build the internet itself, which underlies the World Wide Web, to government, and how those same principles of openness and modularity, of interoperability, can be used to forge a better compact between citizens and their government, can help government work better with less, and can actually make it possible for government to itself act as a platform for entrepreneurs and citizens, the academy, anyone else to work with it to build things themselves that then help citizens to help themselves.
Okay. Is there a difference between open and transparent or is open an expansion of the idea of transparency?
Well, I think transparency is an interesting word these days. So you've got everything from the transparency we expect to see in, say, markets in Wall Street, to the sorts of transparency in the radical sense that people who might support WikiLeaks or similar organizations might talk about. Government transparency is an old idea. It goes back to at least the Enlightenment, if not much further, thinking basically that processes and information, the communications that are made on behalf of the people should be open to them, with certain exceptions because, say, around diplomacy or national security, where making some kinds of communications might make the state itself threatened. So I think transparency is a long-term continuum. There's an absolute to it, which is very difficult to get to. Open certainly is a word that's gotten a great deal more prominence in the past decade or so, not just open government, but open source. Now there's the idea of open data, open access in the context of scientific research. Open innovation, working with larger groups outside of organizations, whether they're in government or not, to solve problems collectively, and it goes on from there.
So it seems to me that a lot of what you're talking about is really collaboration. It's about how you get government and individuals and businesses to work together in ways that government can't necessarily do on its own due to limitations of resources. Is that sort of along the lines of what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's definitely what we're talking about. I mean, I think there's an understanding that some of the problems that we face as a country, as a people, I mean, heck, as humanity on the planet, are immense, and that it's very difficult for even an entity as powerful as our federal government to solve on its own, particularly when it's unwieldy and perhaps not as efficient or as tied into itself as it might be. And that's true if you go all the way down. I mean, there are immense challenges in science, immense challenges in politics, immense challenges in education, healthcare, energy, you name it. So the thinking is that the new kinds of connection technologies that now exist and persist around the globe enable us to collaborate in much more meaningful ways. The question is how to structure that collaboration in such a way that It gives people incentives to collaborate, to cooperate, to contribute, protects security and privacy in the process, and really make sure that I think some of the outcomes are shared with with the people as opposed to a couple key contributors.
So, where do you see pushback on this? Because all of this to me seems very logical, but like Michelle Malkin was complaining about something. I saw you put a little exchange there. Where is this just simply ignorance when people push back, or is there some legitimate concern?
Well, like so many things, it's nuanced. I haven't talked to Michelle. I think it'd be interesting to talk to her because she actually had an interchange with Philip Arswell, who's an economist who has been following this space a bit more closely. And I'd be curious to really kind of get into this question of what government should do, because that seemed to be the point of her objection to what we're talking about, which is the introduction of the Presidential Innovation Fellows. It's a program that's loosely modeled upon the Presidential Fellows that have been around for a long time, where people come in and work basically in partnership with people in agencies for 6 months, innovators from the private sector, doctors, technologists, designers, people like that, to try to work on projects that deliver value quickly in different areas. And there's, I think that if I heard her correctly, and again, this is just based upon her tweets and then her subsequent blog post, she's making a point about what the role of government should be. Should government be, in the federal government specifically, right, be in the position of trying to help people find better health care? Should it be in the position of building a system that makes procurement better in terms of getting smaller companies to work with the government more easily, and so on and so forth. Like the question is, what should the role of government be in the 21st century? How should that act? And certainly at the federal level. Now, Malkin's intensely partisan, and she has what I understand to be a libertarian viewpoint. So it's to say that some parts of government just simply shouldn't exist at all. The question, kind of the crux of the difference between her and Arswell, was this issue of open data, right? Whether government should be releasing information collected by or for the people, and then whether that can be then used in the private sector or elsewhere in government to build better services to create economic value. And the canonical examples that are cited by U.S. CTO Todd Park, and indeed by my publisher Tim O'Reilly, are the release of weather data, and then the release of GPS data under President Reagan, and now the release of different kinds of data under this president, including health data, but also labor data, energy data, environmental data, transit data, all kinds of different sorts of things that government has as essentially fuel stock, as feedstock for different services for stimulated economic activity. And there's good reason to think that that's something which has some real legs to it, because there have been businesses started on it. There are businesses that are running all around the world, and there's certainly lots of reasons to think that doing that can in of itself be a very powerful motivator for civic utility, and also in the context of the traditional transparency and accountability side of things too. I just wrote about an application that the Sunlight Foundation uses. It's called Ad Hoc. Runs on a mobile phone, and it uses open data that they've collected from government about campaign contributions in an application that actually listens to a political ad and then identifies who funded it. So you can then see how someone's say, all right, you use the app, you listen to something, and then you know who funded the ad itself. So there's a little facet there. The bigger question, and something I try to articulate in the blog post, though, is whether the vision of government releasing information like this to then work collaboratively with the private sector, with civic developers, with anyone else who's interested in doing so, cities working with states working with the federal government to do this and to kind of create standards that people can then build upon. Is that something which Malkin does or does not agree with? That in fact, there may be some ideological commonality there that she might not realize. Now,
I hate to cut you off, but we're out of time.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Where can they find you?
You can find me at Digifile on Twitter. You can read me at O'Reilly Radar. That's http://radar.o'reilly.com/AlexH. I also contribute to the Huffington Post.
Sorry, that's all we got. Don't worry,
all right.
.tv is us. Thanks for your time, Alex.
Cheers.
Bye.